I'm afraid you'll have to dig deeper in your pockets at the petrol pump. Fuel prices set to increase at midnight. Both grades of fuel now cost just under R2 a litre more, just under R3 a litre increase for diesel. Our reporter Ziniko Mhlaba joins us live from downtown Joburg. Ziniko, good evening to you. These are the biggest increases we've seen for a very long time. What's the situation there tonight?
Well, Stephen, big yes increases indeed. However, it's going to be even more harder for the working class, especially people who are working here in the downtown Johannesburg. You'll remember that as much as the city has been deteriorating in terms of infrastructure, millions of South Africans, especially those who are based here in Johannesburg, still have to commute between their townships and the CBD itself. So we're just outside the filling station here in Marshalltown, which is about 5 kilometers or 1 kilometer away from the actual central business district, where a lot of people do their daily work shift here. So as you can see, the number or the volume of vehicles, especially minibus taxis, are starting now to send into this filling station to make sure that by midnight, or at least they do their last load at about 10 p.m. with full tanks as far as the petrol is concerned. But also remember that, Stephen, that there's been a lot of conversation when it comes to the protection of working class in terms of is organized labor doing enough to ensure that the people who are working are actually protected from these fuel increases, especially when it comes to the impact on their daily lives. So let's bring in Trevor Shako from Saftu so that can give us a sense of whether organized labor, Trevor, is doing enough to ensure that at least systematically or at a policy level there's a bit of limitation in terms of how far these increments go. But also we also understand that there are some international and local dynamics which force or which are actually behind this increment. But from your understanding of whether organized labor is doing enough to protect the workers is a serious question. What do you have to say about that element?
Look, it is true that at the current moment, the organized labor is not doing much to protect workers, especially insofar as the fuel prices are concerned. The increases in fuel prices are obviously going to have adverse effects on the living conditions of workers, the livelihoods of workers, the ability of workers to be able to spend. But even in the midst of that, the organized labor, and at least Saftu, has in the past organized protests to try to raise the issues and awareness around the question of the crisis of cost of living, which has of course gripped the working class people in this country. But secondly, we've also fought against and submitted memoranda last year to the government to say we can't have this kind of living conditions where, one, you have the rise in the prices of fuel, but secondly, you have the rise in interest rates, you have the rise in the price of food, and all of this, in our view, are as a result of the profiteering motives which are behind government's ability, behind the enterprise's ability to pay out dividends and also reap as many profits as possible.
Let me come in, Trevor, there. You're talking about the type of initiatives you've taken, such as protesting, submitting memorandum. One would say those things have not yielded any results because on a monthly basis, workers are faced with these increments. So is that enough, though? How are we going to take this forward? Because protesting and submitting memorandums have not moved government or has not moved any policies in terms of ensuring that there's that protection. So clearly, your strategies have not been working to this point.
Look, the working class movement in general is in disarray, and we have not been able to put up a proper fight against the austerity, against the rising cost of living. Indeed, what we would have submitted last year through memorandums would not have borne results immediately. But what we are sure of is that the working class has to galvanize, the movement has to galvanize the working class in general to be able to fight against this. We have no other weapon, we have no other tool to be able to fight against the rising cost of living except to organize the working people. Remember, here you are not just dealing, for instance, with government that has to, as other economists have suggested, that has to reduce the fuel levy, but you are dealing with organized capital which has come out very strongly and we need to be able to organize. Without proper organization, the working people are going to keep on submitting memorandums and nothing will come out of it.
Okay. This is a reality that cannot be avoided to some extent, because as I said earlier on, we're dealing with the issues of crude oil, international dynamics, as we said earlier on. So what have you done to conscientize the workers themselves in terms of of ensuring that they do whatever they can to ensure that they're able to live through these moments, besides the fact that you are fighting a good fight, as you claim, but what have you done now to conscientize the workers themselves about the realities that actually we will still continue having these increments going into the next 5 or 10 years?
Now, we do political, socio-economic educations in our own organization. We run them on a continuous basis to conscientize the working people. And also the fact that because of the dynamics that you are mentioning about the fact that oil is a global commodity and its prices are set at the global stage, and because of the problems currently with the reduction in the production of oil, of course, you have got the commodity traders who are actually taking advantage of this situation to profit out of that. We do conscientize our workers about many of these aspects. What we, of course, tell them is that they are not going to get anything out of this, and they are not going to live through this without having to put up a fight. But remember, you cannot talk about the cost of living without also mentioning wages and wage increases. So on the part of workers, we as the trade union movement have been fighting for above inflation wage increases so that we can mitigate the rising cost of living.
Shago, thank you very much, sir, for your time. He speaks for Saftu, just giving us insights on how these fuel prices, Stephen, are likely going to impact the working class, especially those who live below the poverty line when it comes to domestic workers, when it comes to security guards, who might have to pay more as far as their transport fares on a daily basis. So we'll find out maybe in the next hour or so, Stephen, from the taxi industry, if they are planning to, to increase any fares as far as at the back of these fuel increases expected to kick in at midnight. So that's it for now, Stephen, from us here downtown Johannesburg. Back to you in studio.
Ziniko Mhlaba, thank you very much indeed. More to come from him, and I'm afraid more to come out of your pocket for petrol from midnight tonight.